Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We are here one more week and we are trying different themes. The idea is not paying attention to limitations of time, people, or even technology. So we are offering you this week a one-on-one conversation with Sharon Ann Rose. She is a delight to listen to. Is a visionary, is a writer, and also has a lot of power when we contemplated together this idea that maybe what life, the planet, is asking for us now is precisely to break ourselves in 1,000 pieces and start all new. So what about if you just hit the subscribe button and enjoy this conversation? Tell me, what have you done since that day in Portland all the way to here? After 15 years, right? Isn't it amazing? 15 years. I haven't talked to you in 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the mama of 3 boys. My eldest is 22. My middle son is 17. My youngest is 10. And that continues to always be such a revolutionary journey. I created a course for mothers of sons, back from really discovering, when my boys were young, it was like so easy for me to mother them. And then as they got older, especially in this teen time, it brought out a lot in me about my anger with the patriarchy, about, different aspects of their masculinity coming forward that I was so uncomfortable with. So it's really taken me on a journey to soften into my own inner masculine nature so that I wasn't taking it out on my boys, who are going through natural developmental life, transitions and growth, instead of me always, do you know what I mean? Like trying to cut them down and feel like they were doing something wrong, instead of just being, their natural.
Part of the system, part of
Yeah.
what the legacy, right, of the patriarchy, and that is
Yes.
so alive.
Yes. Yeah. And it has healthy aspects and it has unhealthy aspects, and ultimately it's their journey, not mine. And so how, I really learned so much about true unconditional love and support. And I'm still learning while being incredibly rooted in my own feminine power as a mother. Like it's quite a process. So that's one thing that I've been deeply immersed in. And then my work with women has just continued to deepen, to become even more sustainable and to thrive. And it's what I love. And it's certainly transformed and taken different qualities and themes and faces to it. But really, at the core, it's about supporting women in being incredibly rooted in their own feminine power, and not by external definitions. Because what I found is that feminine power really burst, in what, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, and yet it was still part of the patriarchy, in all honesty. And so the true feminine power is not one that anything outside of us can tell us how it's going to go down, what it's going to look like, how it's going to present, what it's going to feel like to us. It is so personal, and it's meant to be that way, because that's where the juicy understanding is, when we really forge a relationship with that power inside of us, not try to get it outside of us. So that's really what's evolved for me, and it's just such a joy to keep learning more myself. Of like, whoa, this is big. This is really, really big.
Are you talking, and many things come to, of all that you have said, many things come to mind, like, and one side is mothering the adolescent, in terms of, so we started together in terms of, because you always had this soft, earthy mothering, everything that mothering represents. I remember you always in like that soft, great connection to nature and earth. That's what I remember from you. Then we go through the parenting during adolescence that I didn't think you were going to immerse in that. And in fact, you are such a expression of the feminine, and all of a sudden finding three boys at home, right? And three men already, basically, that you have at home. Tell me a little bit of the differences in parenting these two aspects of yourself, because at the end are two aspects of yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I even feel a little teary as you like reflect that and acknowledge that. And so the part of me that I really have been relearning to parent is the part of me that was so ready, to demean, criticize, judge anything outside of me, but it was also doing it inside of me. So it was that really damaged masculine energy. It was that aspect of myself that was so entrapped in the patriarchy, that was wanting things to be a certain way, or thinking I had to fix things, or that there was something wrong, one with my children, but more so with myself, and falling into this exquisite softness, so I'm giggling because I know a lot of people have seen me that way, like, you're so soft and connected to the earth. And yes, that's an aspect of me, but there's a hell of a lot more that was going on, that really I needed. That softness was almost how I presented to the world. And so I've been learning to parent that part of me and say, I'm so grateful I gave it to the world, sure, but guess what? I need to give it to me. I need to give it to those who are in my immediate environment, which is my partner and my children. I need to give it to the women that I work with, which I almost always was, but that deeper place of allowing me to literally come from that kind of softness inside is incredibly brave, is incredibly vulnerable, because it means I'm not going to criticize myself for anything, nor am I going to take in anyone else's criticisms of me. I'm going to keep just flowing and unfolding and cherishing myself and loving myself, and just really appreciating who I am in the world, which is, can sound pretty egotistical, but when you're deepening into your own inner softness, it's one of the most precious, brave places of sincere homecoming, and it's
do you feel then, sorry to interrupt,
no,
because you're talking and I'm thinking, that do you think that softness that you had was also a softness that you projected outside? That's what I'm trying to say. When we met in the past, that connection, that mothering aspect, because because I'm from Spain, and sometimes I'm blunt and say things like directly, right? And I admire women that are soft and warm. I am warm and soft in a different way, right? Maybe it's a cultural difference. Do you think that softness also that we enact in certain moments in our lives, especially when we're younger, do you think is also, or do you feel that is also instilled by the patriarchy itself, in terms of it lacks a layer of depth that is very much into the outside, and then maybe that what you were saying, that now you have to integrate that and give it to you, now is maybe has to do with exactly that, like okay, now I decide the depth of this softness or connection to earth in a different way, because before it also prevent us sometimes, right, of the full expression of who we are. Did you follow what I said?
I totally followed what you said. And first, so I'm kind of tracking it. So I want to acknowledge, like, I'm giggling because I really felt that in you. Like, you really gave me that gift. I remember back in our training of, look at this woman who's so filled with fire and totally comfortable with it. I remember you even sharing a story about anger and yelling or something. And like, I could see through your eyes how that was a very healthy thing, versus in my own, misaligned softness. I was afraid to let that part of me, you know, truly out into the world. Certainly my husband and kiddos saw it, but the world didn't see that. And so the irony is, the softer I get with myself, the more fierce I'm allowing outer, especially the women I work with see this, like, you don't get to mess with this part of me. This is my most precious flowering. Nobody gets this. This is mine.
That is wonderful that you say that, because that firstness that you saw in me, that fire, I was not aware that I had that. Isn't it amazing, right? How important it is to have each other, because from you, I learned that softness that I felt I didn't have, you know?
And then that place where, like, this, like, I love what we're communing about and conversing about, because where the fierceness becomes the softness, and then the softness becomes the fierceness, and they're not separate, you know. It's like, oh, my softness is so freaking fierce, and I feel like your fierceness is so soft, and, you know, and vice versa. And I love that place when we don't have to separate them out. And I think that was the part that I had to really go on a warrior-esque journey for, which was, I was petrified of my softness, because I, again, was so trained to let that be the outer part of me, like you were saying. And so to really reclaim that and say, nobody gets to touch this, is, you know, really my stand for myself, but it's what I stand for women. Like, nobody gets to touch this part inside of us that is so deeply ours, and our own intimacy, you know, with our creative capacities and our power and our own source, you know, truly our own source energy. No one gets to touch that ever. And that feels incredibly like, no, I'm not even going to go along with the one that says, like, this is what I give my partner or my husband. I don't. This one is mine. I don't even give it to my children. And that took a lot. Like, that also took a midlife crisis, per se, of realizing how much I was giving that away, and really that I needed to reclaim that as my source energy, because without it, I can't keep rejuvenating, and, do you know what I mean? Constantly recirculating inside to be able to show up fiercely for the world and for the things that I value most, without, you know, holding that inside and making it all mine, totally all mine.
I want to know more about that, to make it all yours, you know, to make all of these mine, and nobody can touch that. I'm going through a interesting transition right now, and it doesn't have to do with midlife. It's like, I was looking at your website, and you had something here really beautiful, right? That you said, are you entering a midlife or currently feeling unfulfilled, with fear, stagnation? You don't know where things begin and where to start, right? And I feel that that is a midlife crisis, but also from the planet, you know, like I think we are living in this specific moment that is beyond the title of crisis in our midlife, or we as women, or we as men, or is more about that there's a big transition happening, that the deeper I went into your site, your website, looking through how important it is to go to the root of it, right? Like, it's kind of like, it is not about realizing up here. It is now, it's time, like, no, we have to go to the underworld right now. How can we look for the cracks, the things that are broken? How can we break ourselves in 1,000 pieces in order to reconfigure ourselves again? And I am exactly in that process. And when I was reading you, and it is not about midlife crisis, because I think I work on that enough, but now my life is more about, it is not the job that I'm looking for, has nothing to do what is on the market. The life that I want to lead, it doesn't have a framework. I feel more inclined or pulled by leading with the heart, finding the economy of the heart instead of the economy of the brain or the economy of the muscle, or so I'm wondering, how do you find that, how do you feel the pulse of the women that you work with, or the relationship you work with, or the men you work with? Tell me a little bit more about these.
I love how you're saying, that it's really what's going on in the planet right now,
Yeah.
because so what I went through in midlife, and I know it was like you're saying, it is triggered by something that literally started to happen in my body, which was certainly connected to hormones, but that's just the surface. And I've been invested in women's work and women's spirituality and really studying, the sacred feminine for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So I was like, what the F is going on?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And I'm not saying this like I should know better or high and mighty, meaning like, what the hell is happening to my body and my brain and my capacity to, and I love what you spoke of, like just that you have to crack everything open. It was literally like more of me was being asked to crack open than I had ever allowed before. And that was my ongoing pilgrimage. I was always cracking open. I was always dying. That was my journey as a feminine leader. So here I was like in this time, and how it presented was, yeah, certainly I had so many symptoms, but I stopped sleeping. And that's never anything I've ever experienced in my life. So I had to learn to go through first, these stages of really, they were exquisite anxiety and panic and voices I was hearing, and like all this stuff happening at night from one being exhausted, but then sitting in the dark of the night with the world every single night. I couldn't get away from it. It was as if something in me said, you can no longer rest. Not that, I was always a person who wanted to fight for what I believed in, but this was a different kind. This was saying, I want you to sit in the darkest place of the night with every iota of your fear and the planet's fear, and sit there. And don't try to fix it, because I was really good at fixing things. And like you said, it was going to the root, going to the base. Often it felt like I was in a real deep, watery underworld, like you said, just sitting and learning how to be with that and not scramble, not freak out, not, make myself sick over it. And out of that, I learned so much, one, of what's happening and has happened to women's bodies, and how much we have been cut off from this exquisite access we have to underworld wisdom that comes through our bodies. And then we're told it's symptoms, it's crisis, it's all these things, versus it's actually sort of the arrow saying, no, go there, learn how to go there and be with this level of power that is so not of this world, that is so deep, that does not have words for it, has zero structures out in the world that can meet it or match it, and then become that in the world so that you can allow that to be born through you and build through you. And you get to become the mother of, back to that kind of parenting theme of, you now get to parent creation actively coming alive through you, which is a new creation for the entire world and way of being together. Because we're at such a planetary moment, of absolutely everything being shredded, and it needs to be. And then here we are, these women. And that's what I began realizing. It was women again, it's not about midlife, but it is about midlife, because astrologically, like so many things happen for a woman and men in their midlife. But what I began to see is women, when they were supported to deeply return to listening to the truth of their bodies and their psyches, and allow those to once again merge and unify and coalesce, they become literally the truth sayers of what wants to come forward now, what wants to be born, what wants to move through the soil and come down from the heavens. We're the body and the vessel of it. And so it's such a profound time to really listen.
Because I feel that, like I feel that First, nothing, it is so broken, my reality right now. Like I am shattering my concept of family. I'm shattering my concept of relationships, and not women and men relationship. I'm even talking about my friends, my neighbors. It is kind of like I feel so alone, but it's a necessary process to, as I was telling you, to break myself completely and be in that feeling of not existent, like I'm kind of like configuring, recoding my whole system. I don't even want to talk in terms of machines because I am not interested in that. But it has something to do with my, even if you were my genetic code, like something is moving very deeply that it has nothing to do with money, doesn't have to do with, I was telling you, with the job that I want to have. It is more about leading with, it's something that you said, or in the book that you were part of it. It is women on purpose, on purpose, you said. It is not with a purpose. For me, it's on purpose. That for me, that has much more intention, like, can I be brave enough to allow this time to break me to the point that I need to give new meaning to the words that I used to know. Transformation and transformative powers, like how can we completely reconfigure a new language? Because talking and talking about it is not enough, because that talking goes a lot to reason. And for me, reason take us far away from mystery, far away from how can we bring, what do you do with these women to bring, because the way you were talking, I was feeling that you were able to take it to the body. So it's about the body, it's not about ideas, it's not about reasoning, it's not about to understand, it's about to feel without fear this brokenness, right?
Yes. Yeah. So beautifully. I mean, I love what you're describing in your own life. I love the words you're using around shattering and breaking. And I wish I had it right here by my side. But one of the ways that I work is I often literally, so when I facilitate groups, I literally have some kind of container. So I have this beautiful womb bowl, is what I call it. And I use that kind of behind the scenes because I'm always tending the space and really listening to the energy and the wisdom of the women's space, like what's next needed or what element, you know what I mean? And I do ritual with that bowl. So this womb bowl is one that I've used for over 20 years, since my very first woman's, event and circle. And it shattered in the past couple of years. It totally shattered. And so recently, so one of the things I have started, I'm doing sort of a pilot program of a feminine leadership initiate training, because over the years, women would always come to me and say, would you initiate me? Because one of my background is as a priestess. And I'm like, nope, because I so wholeheartedly didn't believe initiation was done by someone outside of you. I was very aware it burbled up inside of you, and it was your own journey, with reclaiming creation inside of you. But as I've matured, I realized, oh, they weren't literally asking me to initiate them, although some probably were. But it was this place of learning how to hold space for women in their own initiate process. So I've started a pilot program so that I could really kind of test out the waters and bring together the materials. And so for that, I brought the bowl back together. I started to glue it, and even painted some gold on it. And so I love this analogy of letting ourselves be shattered, because over the past few years of my own, deep dive into, quite simply, the other world, and finally saying, oh, I'm going to be a way shower of this. I stopped talking, like not literally with my family, but I no longer was on social media. I wasn't writing, which was always such a huge part of how I processed. I stopped all of that, what you're saying, that sort of bringing things up, constantly trying to find ways to organize things, understand them, bring them into form. And I just learned how to sit again in that quietude of formlessness and learn to become comfortable in my body with it, because I wasn't comfortable. I don't think many people are comfortable in the
I think
chaos.
we all have complexes, and especially women, right? Like, damn, I'm telling my daughter the same. You're like, how can you complaining with your body now that you're 17? Then you're gonna see pictures when you are 29, and you're gonna say, "What the hell was I thinking?" Right?
Yes. Yeah, life and creation are incredibly chaotic, and we are not brought up to be able to stay rooted in the chaos.
But I like that.
And realize it's like we can allow that level of just like churning reformation to happen in us without thinking we're discombobulated, crazy, confused. Like, this is life. It's constantly bubbling and overflowing and bursting and going dormant and dying and being reborn. Like, and we have not been taught how to live with that in our own systems, and then therefore live with it in the world. And that's why we all run around hating each other and trying so hard to make everyone like us, because we're so uncomfortable with that level of kind of chaotic reality, which really I have found is, true love, like learning how to be so, poised. And poised means many things for many people. But what I mean by that is remaining so deeply in alignment and connected to yourself that you no longer need the outer world, to comfort you, because you're right here fiercely in that soft space of, I know I got that softness in me. It's not going anywhere. So it doesn't matter what happens. I can be shot. I can be screamed at. I can be demeaned. I can, and it will be uncomfortable, I'm sure. And it has been when that has happened, but there's a different level of just that kind of self-anchoring into, no, I'm here with me. I will never desert myself again, ever.
That is beautiful, because when we are in the middle of chaos, that I find sometimes that chaos scary, no? Right? Sometimes it's scary. However, there's a level of beauty in that chaos that comes from chaos that is so important. And everything that you were saying about that, finding that poise within, poise in your groundedness, being grounded and being in connection with who you are, or being who you are, period, right? And for me, there's a new call from this earth, more than ever, because there's an opportunity with all this dislocation of everything, dislocation of the economy, dislocation of jobs, dislocation of people quitting their jobs now after all this pandemic, because they want to reconsider what happiness means for them, right? We put all of this. I think there's a bigger call that for whatever reason, I feel is coming from what we are scared the most, right? We need to go deep in the dark soil, deep down to the earth, and bring our ghosts, bring our spirits, our ancestors from the past, that they're probably telling us something, right? That we are so scared to hear because we think they are ugly, right? That chaos can be ugly, but I think it's only a label, right? In a way, that chaotic feeling, if we dissect it to the center of what it is, might be beautiful if we are able to change that perspective, right?
Yeah, you speak so much about, for me, one of the biggest tenets about feminine wisdom is, living a life where you truly see beauty everywhere, where you find it, where you literally carry the medicine of beauty. And it's a tough one. Trust me, it's a tough one to swallow at times when you're looking at things where you just are so not in agreement with what's going on. But if you stay at that level, then you are sort of fragmenting your own self. You're cutting yourself from your own source of beauty. And so when, this may not even be a great example, but this morning as I was biking, this man, often as I'm going to go past people walking, I'll say, passing you on your left. And sometimes I'll get really angry if people are like kind of coming in the middle of the bike path, or, you know what I mean? It's just like, girl, darn it, like I'm going to pass you. Anyway, so I was going by and I said, on your left, to this couple who are walking, and they didn't even say anything or acknowledge me. And then the next man, as I passed him, he said, thank you. And I burst out crying. I was just like, he acknowledged, here I was. And there was so much more in it. There was like, in the past, he was a businessman, like dressed up in his little tie, and he was out for a walk. And I maybe would have been like, what is he doing? You know what I mean? I don't even know. But meaning that moment of, I saw this deep beauty from this man connect with my deep beauty, which was, I wanted to acknowledge and share comfort that I was going to be whizzing by on a bike, and he said, thank you. And it just shattered me open because I could feel our common humanity, irrespective of the lives we might live or the things we might believe, or, the different political stances we might have, or the different genders we have. Like I could feel this common shared beauty for, a commonality of being a gracious human being to one another. And it just shattered my heart. And I just wept as I was biking the rest of the way. And so that piece around, really going to the beauty, and we have to go pretty darn deep sometimes because we will judge it, undoubtedly, especially when it ruffles our own feathers and it's not similar to what we're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. But when we can keep going and, like you said, really go to the places that we would normally shame or demean, and even about ourselves, like that ghost, no way is that on my team. That shadow, that is on someone else's team. It's not on mine. But when we realize it is all on our team, that team is inside of us, and we can really find the beauty in letting this chaos of creation hold all of that in us and for us, then we get to connect with, life so much more intimately than ever before. And I'm wondering and curious about, as you were speaking about your relationship shattering, because I know for me, it completely shattered how I related to anyone and anything, and I still don't have words quite for what's reforming through that, but it's an understanding, like I must be so intimate with myself, and that's the only way I can actually be intimate with others in all of life in a sincere, honest way.
And part of being a woman also, at least how I understood it since I realized that I was a woman, I was cultured in a way, conditioned to believe how important it is to give and constantly give. And even my daughter was telling me the other day, and this is a part of how I am, how this has shattered, whether it's my family, my relationship, my relationship to the world, how I give. And I am aware that there's always an under contract, right? That you want a little bit for you, like, okay, I give you all of this and I want a little bit for me. But it goes a little bit beyond that, because I also looked at that. But I completely forgot to give to myself for years. Like I even don't feel comfortable giving to myself, right? That there's always, if I can be going through a lot, my friend has a problem that the other day happened, my friend has a problem. I'm going to completely block everything that is on me that is affecting me, and she or he is going to be my priority in that moment because I need to give. And I want to give and I like giving, but it's difficult, like when you have been for ages giving, you completely forget how does it feel. You feel even guilty, right? To give to put yourself first. And I think that is a common thread in women in general, right? We are kind of like designed for being this way. Conditioned, probably cultural condition, but
yes, yeah. I think we literally go against how we are primally, wired in our brain when we give to ourselves. I think we're literally going against, you know what I mean? Like what we were.
It's easy for you to give to yourself? Because
it is now, and it was because of my health when I was going through this profound initiation with insomnia as the symptom. I literally was becoming a zombie, and so my youngest son at the time was 8 and 9. And so it was devastating to me, but I literally could not show up for him. I couldn't. My brain was not firing. I had zero energy. I would walk around shaking, it was so, my body was no longer able to function in the world in the way that I used to. And so I had to sit there with all of those thoughts, all of those voices in my head of, you're a crappy mother. You should be able to mother him like you did your other boys. You're not even, like all of it. And then I had to just keep sitting and going, what's the reality right now, hon? You are incredibly exhausted. And so instead of looking at it that way, how about watching all the ways his dad was stepping in more, his older brothers were stepping in more. Like he was fine. He was totally fine. So it helped me realize this reality that I was living in that was no longer going to help me get to the next stage of my life, which was a reality that presumed my care of others is what made it or broke it for others. Do you know what I mean? And really like realizing if I truly did die, would they continue on? Yeah, life would continue on just fine.
yeah.
So in that time, really restoring, what would it be like to live from things like pleasure and fun and happiness and joy and beauty? And
However, it required for you to go to the limit of not being able to function to learn the lesson. And I feel sometimes, and then you can live out of the joy and the happiness, but that struggle and suffering, it is required at some level because it is to lose the fear to go all the way down, right? Like life took you like this and it beat you up and said, now you're gonna, you don't want to break, let me break you in order for you to learn this lesson, right? It required to get to that limit to bring that beauty, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the piece. It's like, especially for women, that's such a space that I'll hold is like, no, go that deep.
Yeah.
Like fearlessly break, fearlessly become exhausted with the way you've been living. Like let yourself feel those feelings, because if you don't, you'll keep doing that kind of knee-jerk reactions that we're so used to. And now in my life, I've transformed how I show up to women friends. A lot of times I was the one that women would come to, when they were going through a hard time. And now I've like really pivoted where certainly I'm still going to be a friend, but I save that part of me for my work. That's the part of me where I also feel incredibly replenished by, for many reasons. One, these women, just they are committing to themselves. And so thus it's a very different energy when I give to someone who is committing already to themselves. It sort of amplifies. And when I'm trying to give to someone who is not yet giving to themselves, it's almost like it kind of bounces off. Do you know what I mean? And you can spin in those places where no one's getting anywhere, and the energy just ends up being depleted for everybody instead of replenished. And so now I have this radar, this sonar from being in those deep waters that's able to feel when what I have to give is going to be received. If it's not going to be received, it's kind of pointless for me to try to give it, because it's going to literally exhaust me and go nowhere for them. And so there's this way that we can start tuning in as women to, where is my gifts actually wanted, needed, yearned for, and appreciated? It's incredibly important, because then when we find that beautiful match, like this amazing wellspring of energy and new vitality comes in for both of us. Like we're both mutually benefited, from those interchanges. And it's really powerful to watch that energetic patterning at work. It's really quite profound. And then we don't get so exhausted, in the world. And we're just so excited to find the next great match for, our gifts and for our capacity to give what we have to give.
Yeah, I feel so related to you, right? Like I had all these in my life, all these people that come to me when they have problems, and then you are there, it's interesting what you said, that because there's a terrible pain also when you give and it's not received. So you just give because not because you want something in return. You just give it because it can, deep down on yourself, or I don't know if it's too narcissistic. I don't think so. You give it because you know that they can be happier, or they can help. Whatever you give, or whether it's a word, whether it's a company, whether it's silence, whatever it is, it's going to be helpful. And then it's not taken. That is also an enormous pain within that you feel, right? And what you say about just give it in your practice, I think it is a very healthy solution also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it allows for each of us to sit in the seat of what our gifts are. And so it also allows me to actually be a friend, because what I realized is I wasn't being a friend.
Yeah.
I was being a counselor, a therapist. Yeah. And that requires me to hold myself a certain way. And then I just wasn't being a sister friend. You know what I mean? Like, and it's important for me to have a human experience of being friends with women and not always being in the seat of counselor or, you know what I mean, therapist, etc. And so when I have this like pocket in my life that I know that's where I show up and let that part of me flow, it's much more sustaining and it's much more easeful. And then these other parts of me come out, for example, with women, then I show up in my silliness. I show up in, you know what I mean? My whatever, risk-taking and play. And and it just creates a different kind of partnership in oneself where we are more devoted to taking really good care of our gifts and not just kind of doing the here you go, world. Here's my gifts everywhere to everyone, when not everybody wants them. Not everybody wants our particular flavor.
And it's the right not to get them, It's like, it's not, take it. And then I am so horrible in pain because you haven't taken it. No, it is. I think it is so important what you just said, the ability to show up as a friend. Mm-hmm. And not as anything else, just as a friend, because you just saying that made me realize that that's what I really want in that relationship. It is the friend. I just want to be the friend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Yes.
So tell me
Aww.
more about your writing. Let's talk about a little bit about your writing. Tell me more about that. What
Yeah.
books
So
have you put there in the world for us?
So I'm writing again, and just was a part of my second book that was published. That's a collaborative project.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a part of many women's voices coming forward to speak about what it means to be living on purpose as a woman. And my chapter was really deeply about, coming out a bit about this midlife journey I've been on. And I equate it with midlife, knowing it's also this rebirth process, for how to show up in my body as a feminine identified being. And really also as a caretaker of the earth, knowing like what's going on in the planet and has been all these years, my body was taking that in. And I wasn't actually realizing the huge impact it had on my psyche, on my health, on my well-being, on my work, on my relationships. And so, this chapter, mine is called There's Life in Stagnation, Midlife Metamorphosis, because I went to that deep place during this time of what I was so frightened of, which really, is stagnation, and what we presume is like a non-moving container. And so I entered this place where nothing was coming in, nothing was going out. I was just finally sitting with myself and with life itself and learning to kind of take back all my power, take back all the things that I had given away, take back all the places where society and the culture, I was just kind of taking those in all the time, absorbing. And then my body and organs were literally done. They could not take in from outside anymore. They finally wanted to taste what was actually inside and recirculating in me. And so I just did this big halt of no more and just sat with myself. And I discovered a lot in that. So that's what that chapter is about, of how I began to rebirth myself. And also, writing was a huge rebirth for me, because I am such a writer, such a poet, that's the way that I connect, with my spirit and with the source of life. And during this time, I stopped writing. I didn't have the faculties to process the way I used to be kind of in that vessel. Energy to just open, and like words and things would come through me, and it just stopped. And I was kind of terrified of that, because I always sort of thought that would be my go-to for how I made it through challenging times. But similar to what you're saying, it was like there were faculties literally in my brain, but probably also just soulfully and sacredly, that just stopped working. They weren't wanting to use language in the way that I used to. They weren't wanting to kind of do that partnership with spirit in the way that I used to. It was just finally this opportunity to say, no, you're literally being refashioned from the ground up, and just open yourself to that process and see what happens, and know that it takes time. I don't think I too have this real fiery makeup. And so I was pretty quick and fast. I wanted, once things kind of downloaded, boom, I wanted to create them, put them into words, put them out there.
Uh-huh.
And I learned to really sit and simmer and not even go to the languaging faculty, of my brain, and just kind of be in the formless state of, wow, this is an interesting little contained stagnant place to sit in. And I no longer have to judge what I thought stagnancy was, or being stuck, like how we hear that all the time, like, yeah, heaven forbid we're stuck. It's like, oh, actually sit stuck for a while. It's pretty amazing. Like you're saying, to shatter. It's like, it's amazing when we finally appreciate things that we were told were so wrong and bad and unhealthy, and we literally reclaim them as a power and a medicine for ourselves, because we will never be the same again after that, ever. We're totally reformed. So that's what some of my writing right now is really tapping into, and what I'm expressing and sharing, and what this book and my chapter in it was about.
It is, you appearing and showing up in my life in this moment is so interesting because it's exactly what I feel. I mean, where we talk about during the conversation, even when you say there's life in stagnation, I even want to lose the fear because the stagnation for me could be like bacteria, things getting wrong. Everything is like smelly, bad, not moving. And we are so scared of those things because, and I think this time requires from us that, like, okay, this is it. This is it. What are you going to do with this? What is this bacteria, smelly thing that doesn't move forward? As society tells us all the time, move forward, forward, keep going, keep walking. Maybe not. Maybe it's just like, let me, like, let me just melt in this poetry pod, right here, and see what happens with all my fear, everything. So, because not even language, as you were saying, it's like it's not about the words have lost their meaning too. It is like doing everything new because we have no other option. No other option.
Yeah, and going back to something you previously said, it's learning how to do it from a felt sense instead of a thought sense.
Yeah.
Those are really different realities. And again, neither in my path, neither of them are right or wrong, but it's really different when you feel your way through life versus when you think your way through life. Those are like night and day. And I think we are in a time where everyone is craving to drop down from here, deeper into our own bodies for many reasons. But one, I mean, we have the highest rates of overwhelm, you know what I mean? Anxiety, just too much intellectual stimulation for going on for so long now that we're all like, can we please have a break from using that faculty so much and so predominantly? And so it's that beautiful way of going, what would it be like if I just kind of simmered here and let what wants to happen instead of doing that, like I better create it from my thought system versus like let me feel my way through, almost like an organic aspect of life, like a plant does, like a creature does, like we all did as children. And it's okay to bring that part of us back onto the team again, knowing, there is nothing wrong with the thoughts and the way that we use them to vision things. So that's important, but it's been taking up way too much space and bandwidth. And these other parts of us are asking for a little bit more of some room and to be able to, really hold hands with these other aspects, not to be like yelled at and told what to do all the time. They want to be part of the leadership team, So yeah, feeling our way through is incredible.
Yeah. And how do you put this in motion with your kids?
That's a really good question. I think I'm feeling my way through with that. Really, it's yeah, I've got my youngest one just crawled, for example. He's right next to me on the floor here. He's slithered right up and is lying down next to the chair, which is showing me, he's ready for attention, for example. So in the past, I would have maybe like seen that and done a criticism of myself of like, gosh, I've spoken too long, or I should have been aware of his needs, or like, again, those are all thoughts. Yeah. Versus when I feel my way through, my son just slithered in really respectfully, he's now showing me physically that he's ready for my attention. Do you know what I mean? Like and I don't need to carry any thoughts about this. I can now just feel my way with him into the next moment instead of creating all the very unnecessary self-talk and criticisms, which then, in 30 minutes might also show up as the way I talk to him. versus when I feel my way through, I'm not going to jump up and say he did anything wrong or I did anything wrong. We're just now going to feel into the next moment together and receive information about what to do, the next step, which is me probably graciously saying, oh my God, this conversation was so amazing and beautiful. Now I need to go.
But anyway, before you leave, how can other women can get in contact with you?
Other women can get in contact with me through my website, which is SharonAnnRose.com. So Sharon, SharonAnn, Rose, ROSE.com.
Okay.
And I am slowly making my way back onto social media. So I'm hesitant to say, find me on social media, although I am there. So you can find me, I think, Sharon Ann Rose on Facebook. Okay. And then Sharon Ann Rose on Instagram. I've been starting to learn how to do that.
Well, that's something that we need to reconfigure too. Change the social media. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah. And yet we need to put it in our own terms, right?
Totally. In our own language, our own sense of, true joy in connecting, because that's really what it was always meant for to begin with, but it's kind of lost that,
Okay, Sharon.
So I'd love to mention the 2 books.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm going to put everything in the description below. Okay. But you say it, please.
Okay. I think I even have my recent one right here. So this is Women on Purpose, Women Living on Purpose. And so that is available now. It just was published about a month ago. And then my first book called Faces of the Mother, which is a profound journey, both literally, it talks about the women that I work with and even gives a snapshot through one of the stages of one of the processes that I did with women to rediscover their own inner creative capacity, to touch into the holistic feminine within them. As well as it shares a lot about feminine leadership and my own journey in coming forward with that work in the world.
Okay. So it has been a pleasure to reconnect with you. I mean, thank you for bringing your fierce softness, right? Fierce softness. I love that on you. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and I love your soft fierceness, Yolanda. And I love that we've reconnected, and I would love to chat with you more.
Okay, anytime. Let's make a deal, at least in a couple months or a month. Next month, we need to do it. Okay?
Sounds great, sweetheart.
Thank you so much. Okay. My love to your kids.
Thank you. And to your daughter from mine.
Yeah. Bye-bye, dear.
Okay. Bye, honey.